Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today, Chartwork CEO Ross Clark will look back at the very bumpy markets the past week. Author of the bestseller Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save President Trump, Jerome Corsi, tells us about the behind-the-scenes activities he believes could be affecting your investments. Who belongs to this so-called deep state, and what are they up to? Corsi also talks about tariffs and American tax cuts. Plus, at the end of the show, we'll have a company showcase update from American Manganese President Larry Reaugh. We'll talk to Ross Clark right after this.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Reaugh Shear Zone in Ontario, with grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program to test numerous targets located by recent groundwork is planned for early 2018. Please visit our website at rmroyalty.com.
Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Chartwork CEO Ross Clark. Welcome back to the show and happy Easter, Ross.
And the best of this season for you as well. Looking forward to seeing the grandchildren and all the family over the weekend.
Ross, the stock markets, I would say this would be suitable stock market weather for surfing because of the big waves we're experiencing.
Very, very much so, and lots of white caps. You know, these things they rise strongly and then just give it back quickly. The day-to-day action, you know, in reality though, this is what we used to see in the markets. I mean, the trending phase that we had over the last year was more the anomaly rather than the norm. And when the longer that you have a move like we did and the stronger that it was, the greater the consolidation phase that happens afterwards, because the fundamentals have to catch up with what the market has already been discounting. And we've had our periods of anxiety in the last 2 months here, I guess in particular related to both interest rates and the Trump administration. The talk of tariffs and then the backing off on it, the Korean situation and that improving. So the day-to-day volatility is really something that after that late January peak and the first break into February, that to go into this consolidation is the norm as we try and develop either, you know, a bigger top as this might be, or is it just setting up for the next move to the upside? So, when that upside projection of the Dow related to the size of the correction in 2007 down to 2009, it met really good upside targets. That Fibonacci level that was, 1.618, the size of the break. We talked about this one before. This consolidation has three important levels. The February low, which has now been retested, and that's also been the 20-week moving average. The next key items underneath here are the 20-month moving average on the Dow, and that's at roughly 22,100. That's about 8% below here. And then the big one that you could possibly get to is at 19.5 on the Dow, 20% below here. If either of those numbers, if the 22,100 is hit, you clearly want to spend money down there for a pretty good bounce. And if at some point in the next couple of months we do get to the 50-month average, it's time to go back out and mortgage the house again.
What's happening with yield curves?
Well, this is one of the good positives in the market right now. We had the Fed raise interest rates the first time under the new leadership 10 days ago. And with that, it was more of a buy mystery, sell history, because everybody knew they were going to raise rates. And the bond market has been improving. We actually have bonds up a full 4 points off the lows now of a month ago. And the T-bill rate, the short-term rate, sitting around 168. Remember, this was down at a quarter of a point a year and a half ago. So with this, with the long rates continuing now to soften in the last month, and the short rates just flattening out, you're getting a flattening of the yield curve. That's the difference between the short-term rates and the longer-term rates. And if you look at the 2-year versus the 10-year, which is the real standard item that the industry looks at, it's at its lowest level in 12 years. And it's around 49 basis points. So as long as that continues to flatten, things are good. And in the past, it's been the reversals when we've had short-term rates inverting versus long-term rates, and then the reversal that's been bad for markets. I mean, if you look back, 1981, 1989, 96, 99, 2000, 2007, each one of those times that the yield curve had flattened towards zero or beyond and then made its turn, you saw a hard correction in the market. A minimum, usually 6 months, quite often, like in 2007, it lasted for a couple of years. So we need to watch. We don't need to be concerned about how flat the spread is right now. We just need to watch the trend. And this week, that trend has moved to a new low. So longer term, that's supportive to the markets. Yes, we can get a correction. It could be another 8 or maybe even 20%, but that's probably the worst case scenario.
What's happening with gold?
Gold has been moving with the U.S. dollar. A week ago, it got up there and tested resistance up at the 1350 to 1360 range. Had the potential to break out, but the dollar index found a decent support and has gone into a consolidation. So both of these are stuck in a trading range. And one of the things that I pointed out in a report last week was that to really see this momentum move, not only will we need to see gold move through 1360 in U.S. dollars, but you want to see it moving up relative to all currencies. I mean, that's when you get a real bull market. Think back to the S&P. In coming off the lows in the last couple of years, we had good, strong moves initially off bottoms, and like November of last year through January, the S&P was moving up relative to everything. And when we look at the same equation on the gold market, if it's going to move through 1360, we want to make sure that it's moving against the yen and against the euro, because that's when you get your true momentum move on the upside. So we're stuck in this consolidation. We're early, I think, still in that 8-year bullish cycles. And as long as the 1280 range continues to be a major support, and 1360 is the top end of it, it's a trading market, and but I think eventually it will break out on the upside.
Ross, thanks for the update.
Always good to be with you, Jim.
My guest has been Ross Clark, CEO of Chartworks.ca. Coming up, Jerome Corsi, author of the bestseller Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save President Trump. Next on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. A work program is planned for our Finland property that contains diamond-bearing kimberlite. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ADD, and the Frankfurt Exchange, symbol 82A1. Please visit our website at arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. I'm speaking with Dr. Jerome Corsi. He writes on politics and economics. He's the author of the new bestseller, Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save President Trump. You can find him on Twitter at Jerome_Corsi or gab.ai/Jerome Corsi. He's speaking to us from New Jersey. Jerome, welcome back to This Week in Money.
Great to be back with you. Thank you.
What is the deep state?
Well, I basically wrote the deep state to show people. I think people will be shocked to see the smoking gun, which I think is the evidence against the FBI. That you'll be stunned when you read the book. It's clear there was a coup d'état against the president, and identified the FBI as kind of the center of the plot, and the Department of Justice working with the FBI, and then the CIA. That's the core of what I take to be the deep state. And what I mean is a shadow government, a group of entrenched bureaucrats, largely through the Obama era, that are very globalist-oriented, very hard-left, internationalists, favored Hillary Clinton, looked to an America beyond borders, embraced a lot of the hard-left ideology, and since the George H.W. Bush administration, I think our bureaucracy, and including elements within the IRS and other departments, have gone their own direction in this globalist orientation.
Does that mean they're not really obeying the wishes of the elected politicians?
Especially Donald Trump. I think had Hillary Clinton been elected, the deep state would have been throwing a party, because they would have viewed a move towards internationalism that was consistent with all the objectives they had identified as what they wanted to do, consistent with policies that had been pursued through the Obama administration. And that Donald Trump was such a disruptive force to this deep state, these entrenched interests, that they actually, I believe, we see the evidence of it, and it is pretty shocking, went to create a coup d'etat. And, I make a compelling case in Killing the Deep State that Barack Obama is still working behind the scenes secretly. He's kind of like the wizard behind the screen. He's got a couple of operatives, including Valerie Jarrett, who's moved into the mansion in D.C. that Barack Obama bought when he left the presidency, and that Obama is still working day and night to undermine the Trump presidency. So these are the forces I describe generally as the deep state.
Is the deep state comprised of both Democrats and Republicans?
Yes. I think you see that in even Donald Trump was running against the Republican Party to a large extent. And it was, if you kind of dissect it, it was the GOP elite in Washington, the Washington elite, that are so closely aligned really with the Democrats, with the globalists, with spending money. They're happy to spend money. They're not really conservatives. And even today, I think that element in the Republican Party opposes Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, I think, has his own constituency, which is more of an America First group of patriots, who I think are middle American patriots, certainly not dominating the elite West Coast or the New York City or Washington elite, not the mainstream media elite, or even the Wall Street elite. But I think essentially the Donald Trump base is a lot of middle Americans who are very comfortable with the idea of America first.
Did President Trump hire the head of the CIA as his new Secretary of State as a case of hold your friends close, but your enemies closer?
Well, I think certainly Pompeo, I think, is friendly to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, I believe, wanted Pompeo because through these months of being briefed on national security issues, which is pretty much the first briefing of the president every day, that Pompeo would do to, make sure the president was well aware of all the national security threats around the world, that I think Trump got to be very comfortable with Pompeo and really was very happy to work with him on a closer basis, which is reflected by Trump deciding to promote, as it were, Pompeo to be Secretary of State.
With President Trump versus the deep state, what do you see ahead for the stock markets?
The stock market, I think, is going to do very well. Even, the rebounding, the concern over the trade war, raising tariffs on steel and then saying to China that it's unacceptable that China has this massive trade imbalance in China's favor with the United States. I think, China and other countries in the world are going to have to realize that there's a new sheriff in town, and Trump is not saying he wants to create an unfair advantage against China, just as he wants to make sure that the trading is fair. Now, that kind of a basis, I think, could stimulate the world economy, and what you have with the tax cut is, I think, a very strong economy building again that will create jobs and will create economic growth. The one thing I want to watch very carefully is the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve increases interest rates too high, it could easily slow this down and cause a reversal. So, a careful adjustment up of some percentage points may be called for, but it's going to have to be very carefully fine-tuned because the Federal Reserve gave Obama 8 years of virtually zero interest rates, in which Obama ran up massive deficits and doubled the national debt. I don't think Donald Trump can do that again, but if Donald Trump wants to pay the debt and pay down on the debt, he cannot achieve that with interest rates increasing beyond a certain percentage. 2-3% interest rates are probably inconsequential. 5, 6, 7% interest rates are probably a serious problem.
Is the deep state just in the U.S. or is it worldwide?
I think there's a deep state worldwide. I think it's a tendency of bureaucracies to go off in their own direction. In the EU, you'll hear constant complaints about this nameless bureaucracy that is in Brussels that makes decisions that supersede the state legislatures and are able to control policy to the detriment often of a nation state like Italy or France or Spain, but to the advantage of either the EU as a whole or, in many cases, to the advantage of Germany, which largely dominates the EU. And I think this is one of the factors behind the Brexit, was the feeling that the EU was not going to be beneficial to Great Britain's policies. Great Britain never even joined the the euro rather, over these kinds of concerns. And I think the Brexit vote is another pulling away from the globalism that this deep state internationally has so favored.
Are rising interest rates likely to end real estate bubbles and debt bubbles around the planet?
If they're done intelligently. In other words, if we get a reasonable rate increase over enough period of time where the economy can absorb them. I remember watching very carefully in 2008 when interest rates were getting up over 5% and the interest rate increases were increasing at a pretty steady pace, it precipitated the collapse of the subprime real estate market. And that's the kind of danger. I think, there's a lot of areas of the economy that are yet overextended, student loans, etc. And if interest rates rose too precipitously, repaying those student loans may slow down dramatically. Bursting a bubble like that is not something we want to do quickly.
Are trade wars and the threat of trade wars likely to bring volatility to the markets?
Yes, I think they already have. I think you see, volatility with the last few months with Trump, and I think it's going to continue because the adjustments that Donald Trump wants to make are going to be jarring, at least initially. And until the national and international economy absorb these changes, through Presidents H.W. Bush, through Bill Clinton, through W. Bush, through Obama, we've been pursuing these international free trade agreements, which are the building of this kind of international structure, which does not favor certainly the United States as a nation state, and which allows multinational corporations to pursue labor at the lowest possible price. And that may not be sustainable. It could be very jarring in short run if Trump begins to, say, pull out of NAFTA or reevaluate any of the complex multinational trade deals that are currently in place. Clearly, we pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but since we never entered it, there was never any real disruption in not joining it. I think if we ended NAFTA, there would be certain roller coaster effects, and I expect that, as we gear up with China to try to get more parity in the trade balance, we'll probably have some roller coasters as various measures are put into place.
Is the deep state comprised of globalists?
Yes. That's, I think, the primary orientation of the deep state. And it's bureaucrats and who want to who like their role as bureaucrats, think that they should be making the rules. And with the bureaucrats in a multinational state, with, the multinational corporations really in charge of policy, not just economic policy, but even social policy, I think the bureaucrats in the deep state are very comfortable with that orientation, viewing nation states as outmoded, causing wars and xenophobic and not allowing people to migrate to where they want to live. These views, these internationalist views, I think are going out of vogue quickly because we've seen the results of decades of these multinational trades, decades of UN or EU governance, and the people living under these systems come to realize that they're not being ruled for their own benefit. They're being ruled for somebody else's benefit.
Is Larry Kudlow, as director of the National Economic Council for President Trump, a good hire for the president?
I like Larry Kudlow. I've known Larry for a long time, and I've always been very friendly to him. You remember I worked for 25 years in finance. I worked with banks all over the world and had done a lot of specialization in insurance, mutual fund, financial planning, marketing through banks. And was on Wall Street, created 2 broker-dealers in my career. And I've known Larry and respect his views and his good relationship with President Trump. I think President Trump and Larry Kudlow can talk to each other very directly, 2 New Yorkers, and understand the markets. I think Larry's a good choice, and I think his relationship with the president promises that they could have a good, close working relationship on the economy.
We'll have more with Jerome Corsi next on This Week in Money.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead zinc silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineered gold mine in the Atlan district of northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE, symbol CRL, and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. I'm speaking with Jerome Corsi. He's the author of the bestseller, Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save President Trump. He's speaking to us from New Jersey. Dr. Corsi, the Uptick rule was in place since 1934 to control short selling by only allowing shorts to be on the offer and not allowing them to just hit the bids. In July of 2007, the Uptick rule was removed in the U.S. A year later, the stock market crashed. In 2012, the Uptick rule was removed in Canada, followed by an 80% crash of the TSX Venture Exchange, with some stocks crashing between 90 and 100%. In 2010, the U.S. brought in a modified Uptick rule that does not serve the purpose of the original full Uptick rule. Should President Trump reinstate the full Uptick rule to ensure stock market stability?
Well, I've always thought the Uptick rule is a good idea, which basically means you can't short a stock until it's on an uptick. The rationale behind the rule is that if you can short a stock on a downtick, you can get into this kind of downhill momentum where, one follows the other and they just drive the stock dramatically lower rapidly. If you have to wait for an uptick in order to short the stock, at least it puts a brake on the shorting activity. And a lot of the rapid, movements in markets, a lot of the brakes that have been put on trading in order to prevent crashes have to do with mechanisms like the Uptick rule, which, still allow you to short a stock, but don't allow you to pile on and create kind of a herd movement that drives the stock dramatically down fast and unreasonably fast and unreasonably low. So I guess I would favor reinstalling the Uptick rule.
Should the people behind the removal of the Uptick rule be investigated, along with the people around them who may have benefited financially?
Again, it's another very good question, and I think you could make the argument that certain of the sharks on Wall Street knew that by getting rid of the Uptick rule or modifying the Uptick rule that there was going to be a market opportunity. The issue, though, the difficulty is that there's always sharks on the market calculating one advantage or another. I mean, it's astounded me over the past decades how this computerized trading has taken over, where fractions of a cent arbitrages move huge millions of dollars of stocks and bonds across the market to try to gain, just incremental advantages over a trading partner. And the market today, I think, is not anywhere near what it was decades ago, where the individual or even relatively small but institutional trader had the kind of influence. Today the market is dominated by these massive hedge funds, by these massive swings of capital, and the magnitude of the stock market, dimensions of it have changed so dramatically that I think you could, if you really studied it hard, find out a variety of abuses in trading that would only be apparent to the expert.
Germany banned short trading. Should we do the same thing in North America?
I'm still not in favor of going that far. I mean, I think there's an advantage to short trading. I think there are certain stocks where those who are in the know or can figure it out are able to anticipate downward moves and should benefit from that. I mean, I don't feel like the only move in a stock market that you should be able to benefit from are uptick moves or gains. Obviously, when stocks gain, those who are in long positions are going to benefit. But I think equally you've got to have an opportunity for people to calculate short positions for stocks where you can reasonably anticipate they're going to go down. And as long as insider trading rules are enforced, so there's no real unfair advantage in guessing up or down on a stock, it makes sense for me to be able to have gains on both up and down movement.
Should stock buybacks by companies be banned?
Again, I don't think so. I think there's a legitimate purpose to stock buybacks. I believe, the determination, let's say a company has, record profits or has an enormous amount of cash that becomes available. Increasing shareholder value by buying back stock, paying out those who don't want to be in the stock any longer, maybe at a little bit of a premium, but long term, reducing the number of shares outstanding it's a prudent shareholder reinforcing move. And again, it depends on the corporate situation. There's always a balance, and from a management point of view or shareholder point of view, if you think it's more responsible to distribute some of that cash or those earnings to current shareholders, or to engage in a buyback, which would increase the share value long term of those holdings of stock.
What is the senior executive service, and can President Trump eliminate it?
This is something very few people know about. It was the Jimmy Carter law that allowed for what amounted to something like 10,000 of these senior managers in the bureaucracy who were protected, even more protected than civil service, from being fired, because it was considered that there would be an advantage in having their knowledge and skill over time allow them to be protected so they could continue to manage a bureau, an agency, department, with policy consistency. I think what's happened is it's made it impossible for a president like President Trump to get the bureaucracy to be as responsive to what he wants it to do, because you're limited by these senior protected managers who maybe have their allegiance to a prior heir or to a prior president or a prior set of policies. And given their protected status, even more than civil service, these SES employees in the bureaucracy can simply resist efforts by a president to change the direction of the agency.
Do you think President Trump expected instant loyalty from government workers the same way you'd have loyalty from company workers when you take over a company?
I don't think he expected instant loyalty. I think one of the surprises to President Trump is how difficult Washington is. I mean, this whole leftist establishment, and as I say, this ingrained deep state is largely leftist. The bureaucracy is largely leftist. Those who are coming out of the universities and being trained in recent decades are going to have much more of a leftist leaning, and they are the core of the bureaucracy. I think what President Trump has had come to realize is how cutthroat Washington is, how inhospitable it is, how difficult it is to get anything done. I mean, Harry Truman famously said, if you want a friend in Washington, buy a dog. And I think that's one of the lessons you learn in Washington. And for a politician coming on the scene new, not having watched or lived decades of deal-making in Washington, it's a surprise just how down and dirty Washington can be.
Does your book look at the history of the deep state?
To some extent, yes, it does. I go back through issues of Jack Kennedy and, his difficulties with the military-industrial complex, as Eisenhower warned about. I look at the CIA drug dealing, which goes back to the Air America activities in Vietnam or the Iran-Contra days. I point out that even historically, I reference historians and various political theorists who have identified the deep state and have, warned that we're getting to develop a bureaucracy that is its own governing engine, that is really not defined in the Constitution, and yet exists from presidency to presidency with its own set of rules, its own set of goals, its own policies, and how difficult this is to be controlled, especially when it goes off in a rogue area. I mean, we've had any number of commissions going back to the Church Commission, the Tower Commission, that have warned us of the dangers, for instance, of an intelligence community gone rogue. And today I think we've got to worry about, whether the NSA and the CIA are in fact conducting massive electronic surveillance of the American population under one justification or another, but probably outside the direct authorizations they're given in congressional legislation.
Is the process of draining the swamp underway?
It is, and it's going to take Trump time, and the swamp creatures are going to bite back. I mean, the swamp creatures don't like the swamp being drained, and they're going to bite. So I think Donald Trump's going to be facing a lot of hate because the hard left couldn't believe that Hillary didn't win, and find what Donald Trump to be, as Hillary said, one of the deplorables, all the xenophobic and Islamophobic and sexist and all the other identity politics negatives will be thrown at Donald Trump for being, fundamentally an American first and kind of a, more typical American entrepreneur, not one of the new age identity politics that Hillary Clinton and others would want to impose. I don't think Donald Trump spends a lot of time worrying about safe zones or, pets to help you through difficult times. I think Donald Trump is more of a rough and tumble guy who made his mark in New York business, which requires rough and tumble people to make their mark.
Have Canadian prime ministers been controlled by the deep state?
To some extent, yes. I think in many countries it's been the case, and I think all heads of state face the difficulty of, their runaway governments or the governments not being under their control. Quite a shock to realize that you may not be in control of the government as head of state. Some Canadian prime ministers have had their own particular ideologies. I mean, Trudeau, I think, has got his own quirks and his own kind of celebrity-style personality that is not necessarily in keeping with other more traditional prime ministers that Canada has had over the years. But again, he is a kind of celebrity president and may or may not be the future of Canada.
Is he part of the deep state?
To some extent, I think he's a globalist and he's an internationalist, and to that extent, I think he agrees with the ideological purposes, especially of the deep state in the United States and Canada. I mean, I think we were very close under the Security and Prosperity Partnership under the Bushes, and George W. Bush in particular, of contemplating a North American Union, or at least closer working together three continents three countries on a continental basis. and Trudeau would be in favor of that.
We'll have more with Jerome Corsi next on This Week in Money.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the pink CYDVF, and on Frankfurt C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the US. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the US and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. We're speaking with Jerome Corsi, the author of the bestseller, Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save President Trump. Who or what is QAnon?
Well, there's been these postings by what I take to be a military intelligence agent working closely with President Trump, who's been posting kind of these cryptic comments on the bulletin boards that are part of the really deep internet called the 8chan, bulletin boards that most people would find very hard to find or access or navigate. And I followed it closely, and I think the information that QAnon is giving is showing connections between aspects of how the deep state operates and current policy or events unfolding. And as my book points out in Killing of the Deep State, I think QAnon's been very attuned to this coup d'etat attempt that's been organized within the FBI and Department of Justice against Donald Trump, and has been very useful in exposing this information to the American public.
QAnon referred to 4 a.m. talking points. What were they referring to?
That refers to the program that was instituted in the 50s by the CIA called Operation Mockingbird, in which the CIA would give out every day talking points to journalists that the CIA had on the payroll. Now, these journalists were often very famous people at the time and did not disclose that they were under the pay or on the payroll of the CIA. So when they got these talking points at 4 a.m., most people assumed that the journalists were writing their own opinions and could have been easily fooled that the journalists were in fact just mouthpieces for the CIA line. And QAnon has suggested this is going on today in the mainstream media, and there's a large number of journalists who today are still receiving instructions from the CIA and being paid.
Where do you regularly decode QAnon posts?
Well, I've been doing it on a couple of things. I've been publishing in Infowars.com. There's also been another board called you can find it on Twitter at Calm Before the Storm _stream. So that's at CBTS _stream. And we've been recording the decoding sessions, which sometimes take a couple of hours. And I've been posting those videos on my YouTube channel, which is JRL, my initials, and then CORSI, JRL-CORSI. And so anyone can go, free and listen to any of the decodes you want. And there's also some live streams archived on my YouTube channel, JRL-CORSI.
President Trump signed an omnibus bill last week, but not a budget. President Obama signed omnibus bills and ignored instructions on how the money was to be spent. Can President Trump do the same?
Yes, I think it's one of the reasons President Trump signed the omnibus is that, first of all, he got about $800 billion for the military, which is something that Donald Trump badly wanted and the military wanted. But, for instance, there's money allocated for the Corps of Engineers. Well, that could be used to build the wall, even though it's not allocated for that purpose. Or there's money allocated for Democratic purposes, like Planned Parenthood or other Democratic-favored programs. And President Trump could say, well, I'm not going to spend this money, or I'm not going to spend this money until my nominees for the various departments or the judiciary get confirmed by the Senate. There's great flexibility as to what the president can do under an omnibus bill, much more so than under a budget bill. And I think Trump realized that he, in a sense, could pull the wool over the Democrats' eyes who thought they were getting all these goodies, but Trump understood how the game was being played and was going to do the same thing Obama had done, which was use his discretion as to how, in the final analysis, the money got spent.
If you were an advisor to President Trump, what kind of advice would you give him?
Well, I do basically tweet out much of the things I'm thinking about or advising. I think President Trump needs, to very effectively now counterattack this special prosecutor investigation, because I think it's stalled. I don't think there is any evidence of a Russian collusion. I think what you're facing here is the opportunity for a counterattack. And for, as I point out in Killing the Deep State, I think it will shock many people, but it was the Clintons and the Podesta who were getting paid by Russia. Millions of dollars. There were things like the Uranium One deal or selling military technology to Russia under the reset, which was done. And I even have the bank accounts that Hillary and Podesta were getting paid in, which Russian oligarchs were paying them, tracked the millions of dollars they were receiving. This is not generally known by the American public. And when I believe Mueller and Rosenstein, the special prosecutor, the number 2 in the Department of Justice, Rod Rosenstein, that bears possible criminal responsibility for covering up the Russian bribery scheme in the uranium industry that was known before this Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States voted to allow Russia to buy Uranium One and gain control of 20% of the U.S. uranium. It's interesting because had that been disclosed to the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, I think the deal of the Russian acquisition may have been vetoed, which would have meant Hillary would have lost and Bill Clinton some $140 million that was contributed to the Clinton Foundation. And I think Mueller and Rosenstein were well aware of the advisability of covering up the Russian bribery scheme so the transaction went forward. There are many instances where Mueller and Rosenstein have cooperated to be cover-up artists for the Clinton. And I think Trump could easily begin criminal investigations of Rosenstein and Mueller, which would, grand jury subpoenaing Mueller as target of a criminal investigation would probably be put an end to the special prosecutor's office right there.
Does the Trump administration prefer a weak U.S. dollar policy?
I'm not sure. I don't think that Trump is going to need a weak dollar policy to stimulate the economy or to, make our exports more attractive. I think basically, I think Donald Trump is going to run a reasonably strong dollar policy, and I think in relationship to the euro especially, we'll maintain, and the pound, I think we're going to maintain strong dollar values under Trump. And I expect our economy is going to reflect growth, which will exceed both the UK and the EU, which would justify a stronger dollar policy.
Are we likely to see stability in the oil market?
In the short run, I think oil is going to continue to climb to maybe between 68 and a high of maybe $75 a barrel. I don't think it's going to go back to $120 a barrel in the near future. I think if we continue to produce oil to the extent that we're now capable of it, we could reduce oil to, bring it down to closer to $55 or $60 a barrel. But I think oil in the range of $65 to $70 a barrel would be good for the international economy and generate the kind of profits in the oil industry that would stimulate international growth.
China is said to be backing a petro-yuan with gold. Are we likely to see a good gold market ahead?
Very possibly. I think gold has been increasing in value up and down some, but I think gold is a good long-term investment. There's just so much manipulation in the gold market and silver market that I'm not an expert, and I've stayed away from it to a large extent. I've always considered, and I mostly because of the role I played and, writing politically, I've done very little, if any, investing personally, even though I've run 2 broker-dealers. Simply don't want the liabilities of being compromised by owning this or that stock. But for long-term gains, those who are in the stock and bond market, I think the evidence continues to be that it's, clearly one of the best returns available, as long as you're investing with a, reasonably professional attitude and not looking for quick gains and are looking for a long-term perspective. I think long-term, steady, and fairly reliable gains can continue to be expected out of both the stock and bond markets.
Is silver likely to shadow gold?
I think so. I continue to think so. There's some talk of having, a 2-tier U.S. currency, maybe as was done, for instance, in the Rand before the end of apartheid. It could have a silver-based currency I could see again returning. I know that Jack Kennedy was probably one of the last to give that some serious thought. And I think Donald Trump will raise issues again of whether we need the Federal Reserve and very possibly even whether we need income tax. I think Donald Trump is really much more of a anti-internationalist and would look back even to the Woodrow Wilson era with some of these innovations and see that they could be part of the globalism that we're currently experiencing. And I would not be surprised, especially if Donald Trump gets a second term, to see issues of the Federal Reserve and the income tax be seriously revisited.
What would replace income tax to raise money for the government?
I think we could do it through a combination of value-added taxes, very much like Europe raises money. I think we could do it through basically what amounts to sales taxes, consumption taxes, rather than income taxes, which have a bit of a basis of being a little fairer. I mean, we've got half the population almost today that pays no income tax at all. And the income tax that is paid is being paid by a very disproportionate amount by a small percentage of the population at the top. And I think that's long-term not a good formula, and one that merits evaluation of the entire system, where a consumption tax might generate more revenue and have the ability to be a little bit more stable and might even be more productive of investment development if those at the upper end were allowed to keep their income gain.
What sectors are you most bullish on?
Well, again, since I'm not really actively investing, I have not, gone as deeply into it. But I'm very bullish on any of the military-related industries because I think we're going to rearm. I'm very bullish on aeronautics, continue to be, and on overall kind of computer enhancements of various kinds, computerization throughout life and industry. I'm not very bullish these days on the internet media giants like Facebook and Google. I think they're going to be all very quickly under FTC regulation, and they're going to face potential breakup. I'm also I think the traditional entertainment industries, I think Hollywood is increasingly a risky bet, and you're looking to more diversified entertainment industries and diversified, internet-based delivery of entertainment services, that favor the Netflix or that favor, music applications, etc. But I think the traditional entertainment industries are going to be very hard-pressed to be good earners in the near future.
Where can people follow you and find out more about your book, Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save President Trump?
Killing the Deep State is available now all over. It's in all the bookstores. It has reached number one in various categories already in Amazon, and it's available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and BooksAMillion.com. Just look for my name. I'm Jerome Corsi, and that's Corsi, and you can pretty easily find the book.
Jerome, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
My guest has been Dr. Jerome Corsi, author of Killing the Deep State, The Fight to Save President Trump. He was speaking to us from New Jersey. And that wraps up our show for this week. We'd like to thank our guests, Ross Clark, Jerome Corsi, and thank you for listening. If you have any questions for the show, you can email us at info@howstreet.com. A reminder, at the end of the show, we'll have a company showcase update from American Manganese CEO and President Larry Reaugh. I'm Jim Goddard. We'll be back next week with more This Week in Money.
Comments made on This Week in Money are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. This Week in Money is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated. Executive producer is Tom Allen. Welcome to Company Showcase, an advertising feature on howstreet.com.
I'm Jim Goddard. I'm speaking with Larry Reaugh. He's the president and CEO of American Manganese. Welcome back to the show, Larry.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to the long weekend.
Larry, you have some new news for us, something about your financial plans?
Yes, the business plan was released yesterday, and it as usual, press releases these days are bringing in buying. I just had an email from one of our shareholders who said stop putting them out, and he's got a point there, but the reality is people need to understand that there is a plan and there is a future for the company, and regardless of how it immediately affects the market, I think it's a good thing to get out there. And the business plan is really just shows where the management's thoughts are when it comes to moving the project ahead. We know we get 100% recovery from the proof of concept of all of the metals, and to put some numbers around that, just makes a lot of sense. So working with Cometco, we put together a kind of a pro forma of what we could expect from a small 3-ton-a-day plant, and that'd be a demonstration plant. Commercial plant would be bigger, the full commercial plant. This is still a commercial plant, as you can see from the cash flows. And we look at the cash flows and the various chemistries of the batteries, depending on the type. NMC, there's three different types in there. There's the NCA. There's of course, the lithium cobalt, which is, I wish everybody was using that, because that's astounding. And but when you take a look at it, we have a spread there of a year's production of revenue before taxes, and that's what the costs in at 11 to 59 million. And the 11 is at the low end of the scale on MMC, and the 59 is on the LCO. So, we're not going to see 59, but it's a good number to look at. We also did a 3-year pro forma on that, for the NMC 111, which is a popular chemistry at this time. And it's still over $12 million a year. We're looking at a $10 million cost for the plant, so the payback is been somewhere around half a year to a year, depending on the chemistries. That's pretty remarkable. When you stop and think about it, you could accumulate a cash flow there that would put you in a position to build a commercial plant, and you'd be able to probably, float a bond or borrow the money based on the cash flow from the 3-ton-a-day plant. So it's everything's looking really good out there, but the overall market and cobalt prices today are 93,500 per ton. It's been fluctuating between 90 and 95 here for the last week. Those are great prices. And just to go a little further on cobalt, I was reading where there's some DRC companies that are talking about increasing, companies that I actually know very little about, increasing their production of cobalt and dramatically, and I'm having a hard time understanding how they're going to do that, because that means bigger plants, bigger production of copper, and I'm not seeing that at this time. But they're talking about moving up from 6,000 tons per year to 20,000 tons per year.
I don't think that's going to make a significant difference in the overall supply of cobalt. It's still not going to meet demand. So, but it's great to see other companies coming in with more cobalt. That means that cobalt will still be used substantially in the lithium-ion batteries. If cobalt gets too scarce, then the amount that's going to be used is going to be reduced significantly, and they'll be looking for substitutions all the way through. So it's not like that's bad news to us. That's good news to us. And looking at the amount of shares that we've traded this year since January the 1st, we've traded 47 million shares. It may not seem like we've traded 47 million shares, but if you add up the totals between the Canadian and the U.S. exchange in the last 3 months, we have that's what we've traded. So that's a significant amount of interest in the stock. We put out a press release and we see downward pressure on it. Some of that comes from people that are looking for liquidity to sell, but it's the same old game that's being played all the time, and that is try to make the release look, shabby, and the prospects of the company look shabbier, and that's the goal of anybody that short plays the stock. And one way to try to make things look like they're not as good as they sound is to move the stock downwards. But all in all, I'm very happy with the business plan. Now people got something that they can anchor to. They can look at that business plan. For example, if you do 10 million a year in a 3-ton per day plant, it's pretty simple math to say what happens if you do a 30-ton per day. 30 tons per day plant is still pretty small. But that suddenly goes from 10 million a year to 100 million a year. So that's you can sit down and work out any numbers that you want. But remember, what I ask my shareholders to do is to remember that you're talking about 40 million EVs out there in 2040. There's going to be more EV batteries out there to handle than we can with 1 or 2 or 3 plants. And I think that moving ahead, we hope to license these plants to battery manufacturers or end-use manufacturers, whether it's handheld devices or EV cars, to recycle their own product. And I think that's probably going to be the way to go, as well as have individual plants to take the EV batteries and recycle them. So that's about the highlights for me, Jim. I mean, we've got, there's another question that keeps getting asked, and where's the location going to be? Well, I could discuss locations, but it's up in the air. We haven't agreed with anybody to locate anywhere. And I can tell you the first location is going to be built right here in Richmond, BC, and operated. And we'll see how that works out. Remember, we're using scraps. So scraps are benign. They don't have the hazardous material classification as a battery does. So you need licenses to cross state and provincial lines and international lines, and you need all this paperwork to be done and safety aspects that have to be met just to get the product to your door. And but with the scraps, it's just that. It's scraps, and there's no chance of fires or anything resulting from the scrap material. So we can ship that from anywhere, and we can locate the plant anywhere. So it's gonna take a year or so to figure out, okay, where is the optimum place for the plant. Right now, it's in Richmond. And I think that about covers everything that I want to cover, Jim.
Larry, where are you traded, and how can people find out more information?
We're traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol AMY. We're traded in the U.S. under the symbol AMYZF, and we're traded in Frankfurt under the symbol 2AM. You can find our business plan on our website at AmericanManganeseInc.com. If you want to contact the company, you can email me at lreaugh, L-R-E-A-U-G-H, at amymn.com, or phone the office here at 778-574 4444.
Larry, thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
I've been speaking with Larry Reaugh, President and CEO of American Manganese. I'm Jim Goddard. Our conversation took place on March 29th.
Comments made on Company Showcase are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Company Showcase is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.